Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Antonino Salmeri, and today I have the great pleasure of welcoming you to our event, Forward to the Moon, launching a new era of space exploration. This webinar is brought to you by the Space Generation Advisory Council in partnership with the University of Luxembourg, the S&T Center, and with the kind cooperation of the Luxembourg Space Agency. Today, I will be joined by a very distinguished set of panelists who will discuss with me the role that the moon will play for the future of space exploration. In particular, we have Miguel Olivandes Mendes, who is professor and head of the Space Robotics Division at the University of Luxembourg. We have Bob Lombary, who is policy officer at the Luxembourg Space Agency. And we have Paolo Pino, who is doctoral researcher at the Politecnico di Torino and a member of Space Generation Advisory Council. So what's going to be the agenda for our 2 hours webinar? It's going to be a fun event, so I hope you will manage to stay with us for the full 2 hours. For the first 30 minutes, we will warm up the discussion with a round of personal and organizational introductions. Then we will have 1 hour of panel discussion on the topic of, indeed, lunar exploration and how it will enable us to develop a new era of space activities. And then we will reserve the final 30 minutes of the event for a Q&A session. So if you have any question, please feel free to write them in the Zoom Q&A function. Please do not use the chat to ask questions. We will monitor the Q&A. And if you're not with us on Zoom, that's fine. Please feel free to comment on any social media you may be. We are live streaming on YouTube, and we are also, I think, live streaming on Facebook. So we will monitor also that sections. And so if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments in the social media pages. And obviously, feel free to use the chat to instead write a comment or an opinion on the issues that we will be debating and discussing today. So without further ado, I will just say a few words about myself. I am a doctoral researcher at the University of Luxembourg. I'm in space law. I in particular specialize in the legal challenges of space resources and of governance of celestial bodies, like, for instance, governance of lunar exploration. And I work on the same topics for SGC as well. I am the co-lead of the Space Exploration Project Group, and I am the lead of a dedicated action team on lunar governance. You will hear about this later on, the EAGLE team. We have released, indeed, very recently, on the 12th of May, the Space Lunar Governance Report, where we propose the idea of the young generation for the governance of the moon. I also work with other organizations in the space sector, like the Space Corps Foundation, and I'm also a fellow graduate of the International Space University and the Leiden University, the Master in Air and Space Law. And now I would like to give the floor to Miguel for a brief personal introduction, and then we will go to Bob, and then to Paolo, and then we will begin with the organizations. Miguel, feel free.
Hello, thank you very much, Antonino. So hello, everybody. As Antonino mentioned, I'm Miguel Olivares, professor at the University of Luxembourg, and also the head of the Space Robotics Research Group. Yeah, I also recently nominated as Deputy Program Director of the Interdisciplinary Space Master. I'm teaching in this specific master that I will explain you more details later in my presentation. Yeah, I've been here for more than 8 years already here in Luxembourg. I've been working on autonomous navigation for different types of robots, terrestrial robots. And since 2 years, I started a new research group in the S&T for space robotics. I will go more into the details later in my presentation.
Nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miguel. Great to have you here and to do this event in partnership with, with specialists from the University of Luxembourg and the S&T especially. Bob, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you, Antonino. So my name is Bob Lombary. I'm a policy officer at the Luxembourg Space Agency, where I'm working on the Space Resource Total U initiative. In particularly, I'm supporting the setting up of the European Space Resource Innovation Center here in Luxembourg. And on the ESA side, I'm a Luxembourgish delegate to the PBHME, the European Exploration Program. Back to you.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And it's also very nice to, we will talk about this in the first part of the event, but it's great to have such an environment in Luxembourg, between the university, the space agency, the many companies that we have. I think it's a great environment to support and promote space exploration. And then Paolo.
Hello, everyone. Well, first, thanks for having me. Thank you to all the organizers. It's a great pleasure to be part of this incredibly distinguished set of panelists. My name is Paulo Pino. I'm an engineer. My background is materials engineering and space engineering. I am an alumnus of the ISU Florida Tech Commercial Space Studies program. My work in the space field has mostly been centered around space resources, lunar resources, and the lunar ecosystem. I'm also an active member of the Space Generation Advisory Council, and I collaborate with Antonino on so many projects. One of these is the Turtle Initiative. I will tell you more about perhaps later on, in the context of which we deal with many topics regarding the technological development of lunar infrastructures.
Great, Paolo. Thank you very much. And it's wonderful to have you here. One of the purposes of this event was to also integrate with different generations working on the same topic. So I think we managed to do that pretty nicely today. And I'm sure we will have a lot of interesting discussions also on intergenerational perspective on lunar exploration. And I think, the moon is also special because of that. It's not just any rock in the solar system, it's our natural satellite. And therefore, it's something that has a special value for the whole humanity in the present. It did in the past, but also, obviously, it will have in the future. So I will now begin by sharing my presentation on Space Generation Advisory Council. Part of the reason why we wanted to do this event today was also to bring you, a perspective from different organizations that are partnering together to cooperate for the future of space exploration. So in this respect, the idea is really that we show you also how can you engage with our organizations in order to participate in the future and further development of space exploration, each in our different capacities, obviously. So let me share my screen now, and I should be able to, there we go. I hope you can see my slides. Somebody, yes, Paolo confirms, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm gonna briefly talk about Space Generation Advisory Council. If you are part of the space community, you probably have heard already this name, but if you're new, welcome to the largest network of space enthusiast age between 18 or 16, actually, 18 and 35. We are the largest community of young space professionals in the world. And we are a global, non-governmental and non-profit organization. SGC is really the organization for young people in space. If you're passionate about space, if you want to contribute, you definitely need to engage with SGC. And this organization, despite representing the young generation, is already pretty established in the space community, because SGC was conceived in 1999 when I was 7 years old at the third United Nations Conference on the Exploration and Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, Unispace 3. And the purpose of the creation of SGC was to create, within the framework of the United Nations, a consultative mechanism to facilitate the continued participation of young people from all over the world, and especially young people from developing countries and young women in cooperative and space-related activities. So the purpose of SGC was to give a voice to these people, to the young generations, and especially the underrepresented people from the different parts of the space community. And I think since 1999, SGC has done an outstanding job in delivering this framework. So basically, over the last more than 20 years, SGC has been a base for students and for young professionals to discuss together, to talk about space and to make their voice heard in the space community. It connects people. It is a network first and foremost. So the idea is really that through SGC, you can develop connections in the space community, and also you can learn how to be a leader in the space community, how to be, the next policy officer, the next professor, the next generation indeed of people that will shape the future of space. And this is only possible by interacting with the people who are in those positions already in an established way through SGC, which is exactly what we're doing today. The network of SGC is extended everywhere. We cover 6 regions. from 168 countries, and we have more than 15,000 members. But our members are just the core of SGC. We partner with a lot of different organizations, and most importantly, we have a wonderful community of alumni. So everybody who was an SGC member and age after 35 becomes automatically an alumnus, and we have a wonderful community of advisors and mentors who help us developing the next generation of young leaders. The pillars of SGC are the events, the project groups, professional development, scholarship, and UN activities. Very briefly, every year SGC organizes a lot of events all over the world, which you can join from your local community. So reach out to what is called national point of contact, and then you will be part immediately of your local community and you will participate in local events. Obviously, with COVID, this has shifted to online type of participation, but hopefully in the future and or maybe from the next part of this year, we will be able to resume certain type of events. Then there are the project groups, which serve to interact in a transversal way. So no matter where you are on certain topics. For instance, I am the co-lead of the Space Exploration Project Group, where we discuss 500 members of SGC, all different topics of space exploration in an open, transparent, and inclusive way. Then obviously professional development is done through different activities, like for instance, the mentorship program. Join the SGC mentorship program if you can, if you have the time. We welcome mentees and mentors on a regular basis. And in this instance, you will be able to develop your skills as a professional in the space industry. We also try to convey scholarships to the participation of young members who do not have the resources to go to different events. And finally, we cooperate with the United Nations to organize different events and to bring the perspective of the young generation to the decision makers at the UN. We also partner with a lot of different organizations. We have a lot of sponsors who support us, our event. You can see major companies and space agencies, but really we try to interact and everybody is invited to partner with SGC. And then on the topic, of how SGC can change your career and can make an impact in the space community, I will brief you on a new initiative, which is called the EAGLE team. What is the EAGLE team? EAGLE stands for Effective and Adaptive Governance for a Lunar Ecosystem. It is an action team established by SGC in 2020, in June 2020, with the purpose to provide and to advocate the perspective of the young generations on the development of inclusive, effective, and adaptive lunar governance. The EAGLE team has been made of 14 young people representing different countries, 10 countries all over the world, and one goal: the development of a global, intergenerational, and multi-stakeholder pact framed in a lunar governance charter. I will briefly show you what the team has done, but first we have the beautiful faces of the EAGLE team, not mine, but the others for sure. With Paolo, who is also a member of the EAGLE team, I wanted to shoot out this wonderful people, because over the course of an year, under my humble coordination, the EAGLE team has managed to meet with different people to develop some meaningful contribution for the development of lunar governance. And so each of these individuals has done an amazing job and hopefully will continue to do so for lunar governance. So in 3 steps, what has been the work of the EAGLE team? We have a work to assess the lunar policy landscape. In our report, which has been released on the 12th of May, we evaluate different documents and different policy proposals for the regulation of lunar activities. And then we have identified global priorities. One of the things that we notice is that the young generation could be that neutral entity that is able to bring together different parties for the development of lunar governance. And so we met with 21 stakeholders over the course of 4 months, between the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, to see what were their priorities, what they wanted to see in lunar governance. And we interviewed everyone. We interviewed space agencies, we interviewed companies, we interviewed academia, we interviewed civil society, scientific organization. We really wanted to grasp the voice of the space community, the different voices from all over the world. And then after studying the lunar policy landscape and listening to the global space community, we developed our proposal based on what we heard, what we studied, but also based on our ideas for the future of lunar governance. And what we want to see, based on indeed our assessment, is an international framework that can enable incremental regulation of lunar activities. And the purpose of this framework should be to consolidate consensus on shared grounds and settle disagreements on contentious points. These 2 elements are crucial because at the moment we cannot develop too detailed regulation for the purpose of lunar activities. But what we can do is to clarify what we agree upon. And believe me, there are many topics in which we already agree. It's just that we haven't talked about them in a meaningful way. And then we settle disagreement on contentious points. We can talk about it today. What is a safety zone? What should be the purpose of it, right? If we talk about it, we can clarify on a principle level the basics, and then we can move on, learn and develop experience, and then based on that experience, develop future incremental regulation. This is our proposal for our lunar charter. I'm not going to guide you through it. You can read it in our report, in our manifesto, which is a wonderful message that we have for the space community. You can find these documents on our websites. I'm going to share the details in a few seconds. But the idea is to have a pyramid, right? And on the basis of this pyramid, we build on the fundamental rules of space law. Nobody here is questioning that relevance. We all agree that the Outer Space Treaty is a fundamental source that we need to move on. But then we need to do more. We need to have other principles that were not in the Outer Space Treaty, or at least not explicit in the Outer Space Treaty, but we can further develop. These principles are the adaptive governance principle, peaceful purposes, which is a fundamental, actually, cornerstone of the Outer Space Treaty, sustainable development, which is a lesson that we're learning from our experience in the last century, inclusiveness, and then discuss and address in this charter different topics: use of lunar resources, coordination, safety zone, heritage preservation, protection of human life. All the sorts of the fundamental topics that we identified in this list should be discussed and addressed on a principle level in a lunar charter. Ultimately, we want to call to action the space community. We want to call to action, and we're calling to action as the younger generations, everyone in the space community, for the sustainable and peaceful development of the moon. We need to act now that we have the time to develop proper regulation, and we need to do so together. The moon, even if not legally, but for sure spiritually and culturally, belongs to all of us. We have the responsibility to make our voice heard, to discuss together, and eventually all together to develop the moon as a circular ecosystem in a peaceful and sustainable way. Thank you very much. I hope this introduction made you interested in SGC. You know, the Eagle team is just an example of what you can do. We have project groups, we have events, we can create new teams. We want to hear your voice. So if you are below 35, please join SGC. Please look at the work of the Eagle team, especially if you're passionate about lunar governance. These are our contact details, but you can find them all over the place on the internet, on Twitter, on Facebook. Please join this community. And if you are above 35, engage with us. Engage with the young generation, empower them, and enter a meaningful discussion that will enable the future of space exploration for the benefit of all humankind. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, but I want to give you another example of what is, what does it mean to be part of the young generation and work on these subjects from a different perspective, which is a technical one. So Paolo, maybe if you want to quickly guide us through in a couple of minutes on the Turtle project, which is another initiative on lunar activities, then we will conclude the part on SGC.
Absolutely. Thank you, Antonino. And perhaps if I can just share the screen for a second, I will show you a couple of slides that I've prepared for the occasion. I'm gonna ask you a quick confirmation that you can see my screen.
Yes, if you can go full screen.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Wonderful.
Okay. So Turtle, we mentioned Turtle before. This is another initiative that was started by Antonino that entrusted me with the technical coordination that stands for Technical Unit Research for a Thriving Lunar Ecosystem. And from that, I think you can also appreciate Antonino's passion for acronym that recall the name of animals. This initiative mainly was born with the purpose of gathering multiple researchers and professionals from SGC around some critical topics for technical development. Of course, having the moon as a reference. We started this with a contribution to last year IAC, the Cyberspace Edition, in which we opened a discussion on the waste management for space resources activities, which was something that prior to that moment was poorly addressed by the broader community. So we wanted to put some attention on the problem of sustainability that might be environmental in the strictest sense, but of course is much more than that. So we wanted to start that conversation. We gathered multiple perspectives, and building on that initial momentum, we started this broader project, and right now we have 5 groups that are working on 5 key areas of lunar technical development, starting from the infrastructures, the architecture, the logistic implications, and strategic implications as well, moving to the biospheres and how this can be self-sustainable and reduce their dependence from terrestrial bound resupplies, the dust problem, which, as many of you know, of course, is one of the biggest technical challenges for moon exploration, and then going to landing sites and the broader access challenge. So how do we get there? How do we go away from there? And how do we make sure that whoever arrives on the moon can find the proper services and capabilities waiting in place? And finally, power systems. What are the best strategies? Which are the most interoperable one? We really want to gather all these aspects and to connect all these aspects into a holistic perspective that can take all their implications into account when the design starts. So from the very beginning, trying to build something that can be integrative, that can be organic, and that allows and fosters collaboration and cooperation on the moon. So the ultimate goal of this initiative will be finally building what we call an adaptive roadmap. So a roadmap, a technological roadmap that paves the way for the next technological steps, and that does that into an integrated fashion with multiple contributions coming from a variety of different actors from all the countries in the world, and that stays up to date, that constantly evolves and adapts as our progress marches on. So I hope this gives you an attractive enough tease of these activities, and I will welcome anybody who is interested in knowing more to reach out to us. I'd be more than happy to illustrate more in detail what Turtle is about, and to try to involve you all in this new exciting project that we're building.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Paulo. I think this was great. And without further ado, let's move to Miguel and see what the University of Luxembourg is doing on the topics of space exploration and lunar exploration. Miguel, okay. I think you're...
Yeah, you can see my presentation, yeah? So just let me know.
Yes.
So now you are seeing the correct one, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So as I mentioned before, I belong to the SNT, the Interdisciplinary Research Center for Security, Reliability, and Trust. That center is one of the 3 research centers that belong to the University of Luxembourg. And let me introduce it a little bit, what SNT, what my space robotics research group, and also the Interdisciplinary Space Master. Okay, so, well, the vision of this research center is to be a leader international research and innovation center in security, reliability, and trustworthy ICT system and services. The idea is that we play an instrumental role in Luxembourg by boosting research and development investment, leading to economic growth and highly qualified talent. Yeah, and how we are doing this. Yeah. So the idea is that we fuel the national innovation system with top-level research in information and communication technologies, and we do this through high-risk long-term research, highly selective global recruitment, interdisciplinary research approach in key economic sectors, and also collaborative demand-driving research model based on a strategic partnership. Just to show you a little bit some numbers about a system from just almost 12 years. We have 365 workforces. This is, as usual in Luxembourg, very international environment. So we have 66 nationalities. And also an important point is that these people who are working in SNT later are staying here in Luxembourg with a rate of 36%. Also regarding our partnership models, working on industry in really high level required industrial projects, we have 43% of our doctoral candidates that's involved in industrial projects. This is because we have now 56 partners where we have different projects, and we usually have 8 million partners annual contribution. Yeah. We also are pushing for the creation of a spin-off and startups, and we already have 5 spin-off created, and there are 2-3 more on the launching stage. Yep. So that's result. The outcome of this research because of 319 FNR projects, having also 98 EU or ESA projects. We also have 5 ERC grants inside the research center, and 181 million acquired in competitive funding. We usually have a very high level of publication, and that was also in 2020 when we have 435 publications. If you remember, we have 365 researchers, and that means that it's more than 1 publication per person per year. Yeah, we also have 40% of the S&T publication in the top 10% venues. The strategic research areas in this research center are divided in 6 relevant areas, and that are fintech, secure and compliance data management, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, and of course, as we are talking about today here, space systems. This is able to be done thanks of the workforces of different research groups. And here you can see the 15 research group who lead by the director of the center, Björn Ortesten. So let me now introduce you a little bit about the space robotics research group, so you know a little bit more what we are developing here at Luxembourg, at the S&T, on this amazing topic. Yeah. So the Space Robotics Research Group, also called it Space R, started in January last year. So 1 person, that's myself. And currently we are reaching 20 people. So we have 15 researchers, 2 lab technicians, 5 master students, and also 4 open positions. Our mission is to increase the autonomy of aerial robotics, planetary robotics, and orbital robotics, yeah, for space prospection, operations, and also resource utilization, which is, of course, a very important topic here in Luxembourg. So as you see, what we want to focus is on the full autonomous operation loop. That means going from the sensing to the planning, to the control of movement, and also the operation. Yeah, as you see here in this image, we have robotic arms on the aerial and the orbital robotics, and also in the planetary robotics, because we understand that we need to interact with the environment. Yeah, and also because of the main purpose of the space resources and the utilization of the resources. Yeah. You can see here in some draws the focus of the research group. So as mentioned, we are focusing on aerial robotics. This is because I'm coming from this research topic and still have a lot of projects working on this. So like the spreading of pesticide spreading on vineyards, so the control of catastrophe areas, and also the enhancement of 5G technology using drones, and also getting the enhancement of the drones based on this technology. Also, we focus on the orbital robotics. So orbital robotics could be for one of the main topics is in orbit servicing, like the going to another satellite and do some operation with robotics arm, grasping some space debris removal. So grasping some space debris in order to remove it from the environment. And also the autonomous docking, yeah, for doing any kind of servicing, like refueling, deorbiting, or putting in, or giving other capabilities, or extracting any resources of the satellite itself. Also, on the main topic of this talk is we focus, of course, on the moon. We consider planetary robotics the main focus on the moon, and we will later discuss further why it is so important, the moon nowadays. We work on autonomous navigation, prospection, path planning, and cooperation in multiple robots. With one of the focus could be the help on the construction of lunar habitat. Yeah? Here you can see a list of the topics that we are developing currently in the research group, coming from autonomous navigation to the control at different levels, terror robotics, semi-autonomous or fully autonomous robots. We also focus on new robotics technologies like soft robotics, origami robotics, and morphing and adaptable robotics that only space environments have even more importance for these applications. Yeah. Also, what's mentioned before, we focus on robotics manipulation for the planetary part, also on the orbital, and the cooperation between multi-robots that could be heterogeneous or homogeneous. But also again, at the level of planetary activities or application, but also on orbital robotics that could be the formation flight, and also other kind of activities for multiple robots around an asteroid or another satellite. Also, it's a very important topic, the machine learning for robotics, yes, not only for the pose estimation, localization, or mapping of the surface of the moon or the satellite, but also for the control and learning approaches. Yeah, we need to keep in mind that we have very low data about what is over there, and all learning approaches are really important in these applications. Yeah. Here's an overview of what we have achieved in 1.5 years. So say 18 months, we managed to have 10 projects plus 2 partnerships. As mentioned, I was coming from aerial robotics, so that was quite successful final submissions of projects that I'm sharing with my previous research group, the Automation and Robotics Research Group, and also on planetary robotics and orbital robotics. And we recently have signed 2 partnerships with very important companies here in Luxembourg, that is Made in Space Europe and Space D Luxembourg. Made in Space is for orbital servicing using robotic arms, and Space D for active space debris removal. With all this project, we managed to acquire more than 3 million on competitive funding, and we are hoping that we can continue with this growth. I've been in charge since I took my position in space robotics on the development of 2 facilities. One is the Lunar Lab, the Lunar Analog Facility. This is a lab to emulate the visual appearance of the surface of the moon. It's composed by 8x7, so 11x7 meters, so it's around 80 square meters, and we included inside 20 tons of basalt. Yeah, we have closed the environment and painted in black matte in order to simulate the visual, the horizon on the moon. And also the granularity of this basalt allow us to create craters and hills that make us a more realistic environment. We also have a motion capture system that allow us to get information about the position of the robots and also the objects with high precision, so that allow us to validate and evaluate all algorithms, not only on perception, but also on control or trajectory planning. Also, I have been in charge of the development of another facility to test orbital robotics. This is the Syria G Lab. This lab is developed in collaboration with other research group in SMT. And this is basically a closed room of 3 by 5 meters, in where we painted in black matte in order to have similar horizon conditions and also visual conditions. And also, as in the Lunar Lab, we have a single spot of illumination in order to simulate the sun. We have a perfectly flat floor, and we develop in the Spacer group floating platforms. These are these platforms that you can see here on the side. These are platforms that are equipped with pressure buttons, and then it's blow air against the floor, and that's reduce the friction between the platform and the floor. So that simulates microgravity. So let me introduce you the Interdisciplinary Space Master, and where I am the program deputy director. So the Interdisciplinary Space Master is a new initiative supported by the Luxembourg Space Agency, started in 2019. And the idea is to, is hosted by the Faculty of Science, Technology and Medicine, and also the Interdisciplinary the SNT Center, yeah. So the idea is to have a interdisciplinary problem-based learning approach. And just to let you know, we are already having two cohorts. One is already on the final phase. And here you can see a little bit the curriculum of the ISN. That, as mentioned, it's quite interdisciplinary. So we focus on resources and space resources, engineering, robotics, where I teach in these three courses, applications or ICT. They are going also on the low part of very important low part of new space activities, or also entrepreneurship and business and legal problems that can be handling in this. As mentioned, we have different facilities. So furthermore than the Lunar Lab and the Orbital Robotics Lab, but this is hopefully finished to be constructed next month. We also have the CubeSat Lab, concurrent design facility, and also a satellite communication lab. We also have been, that's an example of a project-based learning approach. We have a collaboration with LSA and ESA in a project in the first semester, in where we were working on successful ESA missions to be analyzed and redesigned with respect of the topic of space resources. We have been, we have the contribution from 3 ESA program manager for leading the 3 different projects, and that was at the end a mix of having seminars, final reports, and also it ended with the presentation in the Space Resource Week last month in Luxembourg. So okay, with this I would like to finish and give back the word to Antonino. So if you are interested in the Space Master, it's still open for application. Unfortunately, it's not accepting more non-European applicants because of the problems for getting the visa on time. But we are now waiting for getting more and more European applications. So thank you very much. And please, Antonino.
Thank you, Miguel. This was really wonderful. And before I go to Bob, there is one question that I think we can answer right now from Cillian. He's asking whether the Interdisciplinary Space Master is purely presential, or is it possible to follow remotely? So if you could briefly answer that.
Yeah, sure. So unfortunately, we are now going back to, well, unfortunately, I would say fortunately, we are coming back to face-to-face. So it's going to be an hybrid mode. But we are requesting that people are in Luxembourg, or at least on the greater region. Yeah, the idea, if you can imagine, these labs cannot be used remotely. That's nicely, yeah. And you need to touch these robots and work with the robots, of course, yeah. And also satellite communication, CubeSat, and concurrent design facility. Indeed,
certain things needs to be done hands-on. No Zoom possibility. Thank you very much for your answer, Miguel. And Bob, please talk us about the Luxembourg Space Agency wonderful programs.
Okay, thank you, Antonino. Let me share my screen. Can you confirm that you see the screen?
Not yet. Could you try again? Yes, now it's loading. Yes, we see that perfectly. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So thank you for having me. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm a policy officer at the Luxembourg Space Agency, and I will in the next minutes, I will share some information on the Luxembourg Space Agency, present the Space Resource.eu initiative that we launched in 2016, what we do in the frame of this initiative, and also provide more details on the recently established European Space Resource Innovation Center that we are setting up together with the European Space Agency here in Luxembourg. To start, maybe a few words on the background, on the history of space activities in Luxembourg. As you can see on the left bottom of the slide, the space activities in Luxembourg started in 1985 with the creation of the Société Européenne des Satellites, which is nowadays one of the largest satellite operators in the world. That was the creation of the company was followed with the first launch in '88, and then it took some time until the government decided to join the European Space Agency to further develop and diversify its economy in 2005. Following that step, in 2016, our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of the Economy, Etienne Schneider, launched the Space Resources.eu initiative that I will explain more in detail a bit later in my presentation. And this then finally led to the creation of the Luxembourg Space Agency in 2018. And that's where I'm working nowadays. So the Luxembourg Space Agency is part of the Ministry of the Economy. As you may know, or most of the space agency, either they belong to the Minister of the Economy or the Minister of Research or Science. Those are the two activities that justify to be active in space. So being part of the Ministry of the Economy, obviously one of our main goals is to stimulate economic growth, to create new jobs, to further diversify the Luxembourgish economy. Then we also, one of our mission is to support the local players, to help them develop new technologies, new services, and create value with space, using space technologies, and so on. We also have the mission to develop local talents to support the development of this ecosystem here in Luxembourg. So in the frame of that, in that mission, we developed together with the Luxembourgish space, with the Luxembourgish University, the interdisciplinary space master that was presented by Miguel. And then obviously we also have the mission to engage with international partner and contribute to other international missions and initiatives. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, so in 2016, the Luxembourgish government launched the Space Resource.eu initiative, which basically can be summarized in the following sentence, that Luxembourg aims to contribute to the peaceful exploration and sustainable utilization of space resource for the benefit of humankind. This obviously is a very broad vision, very long-term vision, and many challenges need to be addressed to somehow, how do you want to say, to materialize this vision. And it's not one player or not one mission. It's really a very broad approach to tackle all of these questions simultaneously at many different levels. So on the technical side, obviously, we need to further develop new capabilities and mature existing ones. On the regulatory side, we need to come up with new international frameworks. Obviously, the existing space treaties are not enough or do not explain in detail how space resource can be used in space or should be used. The governance is an important topic. Sustainability is a very important topic. And so that needs to be solved in the years to come. On the financial side, obviously, all these developments take a lot of money. I think in Luxembourg, we try to have a very broad approach. We believe that the private sector has a role to play in this. This should not only be funded by public money, especially as soon as you create value in space, as there are new commercial activities in space. The private side has a role to play, but obviously also need to have a clear legal framework within it will evolve. Then on the business side, obviously it's also a very challenging part when you talk about space resources. Space resources is a very long-term vision, and if you purely define your business model on the activities that you will run in 10 years from now, this will not be sustainable and the company will not succeed. So I think you need to find the right balance between having a clear short-term goal and a long-term vision. So basically, to develop this vision, we developed 5 strategic pillars. The first one, we try to create or to secure political support on a national and international level. We are promoting this at the topic of space resources at many different bodies, at the UN, at the European Commission, at the ESA. Luxembourg engages in bilateral agreements, in multilateral agreements, and we try to raise the awareness of space resources in general and the potential linked to its utilization. On the legal framework, as I mentioned, it's clearly a very important topic, and I will explain it a bit more in detail a bit later on. But we also have a very clear approach. We on one side we have on a national side we published a space resource, so-called space resource law, but we clearly engage on an international level as well. Then there is education and research. That's basically the goal is to create the right talents to support all these ideas and developments. So that's under the frame of this pillar, we developed the interdisciplinary Space Master and also the European Space Resource Innovation Center that I will present a bit later. Innovation and R&D, that's under that pillar, we provide dedicated support for industrial R&D activities to help local companies develop new technologies and new services using space resources. And then we come to the final part, which is funding instrument or the financial pillar, where we try to innovate and not limit these developments or the funding to pure public side, but also involve the private side. And that's for example, one of the activities we launch under that pillar is a PPP, and a public-private partnership to have a space fund that can invest in those companies. As I said, so Luxembourg tries to promote this topic or is promoting this topic on many different levels. We signed an agreement with the European Space Agency in the field of space resources. We signed bilateral agreements with many countries, more than 10, and in particular with the US, with China and Japan. We have agreements with various national space agencies, such as NASA, DLR, the German Space Agency, and CNES, the French Space Agency. We are partner of the IAF, the ISAC-G, and try to collaborate and cooperate on various international bodies. And we also have an agreement with the European Investment Bank. On the legal side, I think that's a very important pillar to support and guide all these developments. Luxembourg published a dedicated law on space resource utilization in 2017. So this Luxembourg was the second country in the world to do so. I think it's very important to understand that this does not mean that we want to just have this law. I think we are very much in favor of an international framework. This is we see this as a step-by-step approach, and to create facts and advance and stimulate the discussion. We believe this is an important step from Luxembourg's point. But we also strongly engage at UN COPUOS. We participate in various multilateral agreements such as the Artemis Accord. We were a member of the Hague International Space Resource Governance Working Group that provided very relevant building blocks for future international framework. And we participate in the Moon Village Association and currently in the Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities. When we talk about space resource, what do we understand by space resource? It's we mean that can be water, oxygen, methane, metals, regolith, and platinum group metals. And I think some obvious application, obviously, the goal is to use those resources for an application. It's a very important topic for human space flight, to support astronauts in space, to produce propellant for launch and for spaceships in space, to build infrastructure on the lunar surface, for example, to protect astronauts from radiation, and eventually use those resources down on Earth. But this is clearly a very long-term use case of space resources. In 2018, we ran a study together with the European Agency on the utilization of space resource, and this slide shows the summary of that study. And that said that probably the first place to use space resource will be the moon. The water and the oxygen on the moon are very important elements, and which will support further space exploration missions and infrastructure building. This then led recently this year to the European Space Resource Innovation Center. This is a center that was established following the memorandum of cooperation we signed together with the European Space Agency. ESRIC aims to become the internationally recognized center of expertise for scientific, technical, business, and economic aspects related to the use of space resource for human and robotic exploration, as well as a future in-space economy. I think it's very interesting or important to be aware that this is obviously it's a national initiative, but it should be deployed in a European with a European dimension, and the partnership with the European Space Agency is very important to include further partners in this center. So the center was established in summer of last year by the Luxembourg Space Agency and the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, and the European Space Agency later joined ESRIC as a strategic partner in November 2020. But obviously, the center is open to more partners and clearly has the ambition to collaborate with any European players in this field. The center itself develops activities around four different areas. Clearly, there are two big areas: is research and business support. On the research side, we put in place a state-of-the-art infrastructure to support research and the development of new technologies that are needed for this future space resource economy. And we also run or conduct our internal research projects with in-house researchers. On the business side, ASRIC will develop a startup support program that will help new companies, new ideas to become successful and sustainable businesses. And then these two main activities are supported by a knowledge management platform where we put together and share the knowledge that is generated in ASRIC with the community. On the other hand, we also would like to further support the creation of a European space resource community through the organization of different events, such as the Space Resource Week we organized in April, or new challenges in this area that we are organizing together with the European Space Agency. On the research side, we develop projects in 3 different areas. On the more technological side, we see 3 different areas on prospecting and mining, which is about identifying, excavating, transporting, and handling space resources. It's very, very closely related to mining down here on Earth. Processing and supply is about processing, transforming space resources, and produce and store these resources. And then obviously at the end, there's using those resources and building infrastructure equipment. And then we have a more end-to-end or transversal research team that will analyze various use cases, as it's very important not to look at these different building blocks individually, but connect them in order to create a value and actually use the space resources. And then even a bit more in technically, what does this mean? So the ASRIC will develop projects mainly around hydrogen, oxygen, and metals. Obviously, those are the 3, I would say, obvious candidates on the lunar surface that can be used, or that we are aware how to use, or have an idea how to use them. So we are starting projects in 2 different lines. One is the use of the regolith, which is mainly metal oxides, and reduce them to use to access the metal on one side and the oxygen on the other side. And the other one is how to use and access the water in the permanently shadowed regions, and then split the water into oxygen and hydrogen, and then basically with the goal to use them in a sustainable way to build, for example, space structures, produce energy, support human space flights, or support a more sustainable space transportation, as it's if we want to have some activities on the lunar surface, it's also important that we can refill our spaceships on the lunar surface, and we do not have to bring the propellant to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
That's all from my side. I hope it was not too long, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Bob. That was wonderful, and I think you already, prompt some of the topic for discussion that we want to explore now. So we will now go into our panel discussion. I have, some topics that I think it would be nice to explore with you. I see some questions are popping up in the Q&A, so thank you for all who are answering or proposing questions. We will go through them at the end of our event in, let's say, about 30 to 40 minutes. But first, let's try to understand, what we're trying to do here, right? The title of our event is Forward to the Moon, and this expression was developed by the European Space Agency former director Jan Werner. He said, we're not just going back to the moon, going forward to the moon, because we want to see the moon as a stepping stone for future space exploration, and we also want to see it, as a testing ground for the new things that we want to do in space. So maybe a few words to just warm up a little bit the discussion. In your views, what is the added value that the moon brings into space exploration? What is the the unique thing that we're looking to do on the moon, that we can do on the moon, that will bring more value to the dynamics of space exploration as they are. And I think I would like to start with Paolo, because this is also a very young generation type of question, right? We're gonna be the one hopefully living in this lunar ecosystem if we're gonna develop one. So like, what would you like to see in there? What are your expectations, and how the moon can help us develop these new expectations for space exploration?
Thank you, Antonino. And this is an extremely interesting question, and there's no a simple answer, of course. It's a very complex topic, but I'd say that to some extent, the intention of exploring space and the moon has always been there, right? It's a natural impulse. But now there are like multiple favorable conditions that are coming together. So the main advantages, of course, for space exploration is that moon is pretty close, and there we can do more science, we can learn more about our solar system, we can improve our technologies, we can learn how to be autonomous. And these are all capabilities that we are going to need when we will venture even further on Mars and so on, hopefully. So there is any like immediately evident technical logistic advantage, of course. And these comes with another advantage, being close, that allows us to build, learn, and repeat, and to kind of adopt a quicker, safer approach in this process. And the other major area of value, I think, is that in that now we can also unlock a new economic sphere, and ultimately a whole new dimension for human existence. This means stepping into a new era of human history, as our presence in space will be permanent.
Nice. Definitely, Paolo. And Miguel, what are your thoughts on this? You are the head of the space robotic division at the University of Luxembourg. What is the new, what is the value that we can have on the moon for also this type of exploration? The first ages will certainly be robotics, so your work is at the core of what we're going to do on the moon. What is the value that you see in that type of exploration?
Yeah, thank you. So, well, as Bob have been mentioned about the importance of the space resources on the moon, and you also, Paolo and you were mentioning before, there is a need to have a playground on the moon. Yeah, so in order to test what we can do further on Mars. Yeah. So we cannot send people to Mars without having them living on the surface of the moon. We need to learn how to construct, how to extract from the resources what we need for the construction, what we need for support life, and also for having shelter for radiation. Yeah. So that's it's like this. It should be like the playground. Yeah, or the test bed. Yeah. To test what we want to do further, yeah. And also there is another key point is like, well, I always like to say in that way to general publics to understand, yeah. If you see how big is the spacecraft when it's leaving Earth, and how big is the spacecraft when it's leaving Moon to come back to Earth, you understand what are the needs on fuel, and how far you can go if you are able to refuel on the moon, yeah? So it's almost 95% of the weight of a spacecraft on fuel when you leave the gravity of Earth. However, you can easily escape from the gravity of the moon with a small deposit, yeah? So that is key, yeah. So I believe that we have reached a kind of a limitation on the space exploration that we need to have to have a kind of gas station on the moon in order to go beyond, yeah, forward and beyond, I would say.
Right. Thank you, Miguel. And I think the perspective of the playground and the gas station are certainly intriguing, because these are the things that we cannot do on Earth and we need to do on the moon. And also I proudly have here the first pin of the European Space Resources Conference that was organized a couple of years ago in Estec in the Netherlands. And obviously you cannot see the pin from here, but it has all the resources and the propellant, the hydrogen that you can make is the biggest one, because it's the greatest thing that we all desire, that we want to do on the moon, and also that can bring more value. At the same time, the perspective of a scientist is the one as a playground. We want to know, we want to see, we want to test. But Bob, I think one of the key messages of the LSA is to develop the moon also from the economic viewpoint in a sustainable way, right? We want to integrate the value chain we have on Earth and the one that we have on the moon. So I think, what do you think about not only having a playground, but also having a flourishing one day economy on the moon? Do you think that's another value that we can find there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I think what's very important is that this time we go forward to the moon, as you mentioned, or you quoted Jan Werner, and we do not return to the moon. I think what's different now than with regards to 50, 60 years ago, we go there and with the intention to stay much longer, stay in a sustainable way, and learn about the moon. I think science is certainly one of the first driver, curiosity to understand more about the moon. The moon tells us a lot about Earth. So I think that's remains a very important pillar to get these activities started. Another thing that's different nowadays is that it's not a race between two nations or two space agencies, but it's a global effort. I think nowadays we have many new space agencies, big ones, large ones, and small ones, and we have also commercial players that start to be active in this field. Why do we go to the moon? Obviously, I think another important element is to learn how to live off the land, how to do sustainable long-term space exploration. As Paolo mentioned, I think the moon is very close to Earth. This certainly has an advantage. We know how to get there. We know how to come back. Moon is much more in that regard. Moon is much more accessible than Mars. Mars, we go there we can go there every 2 years and come back every 2 years. So here we speak more about a few days, and if something goes wrong, we can come home. We can send the additional equipment, whatever is needed, and I think it will allow us to learn how to live in space and how to use space resources. I think it will be the first place where humans will be able to exploit resources in a sustainable way and create these economic activities. And I think from that point of view, it's very important to involve many different players. It will not be one mission. It will be an effort of many different players coming together and supporting each other and sharing communication, sharing power generation, and so on, and avoiding that everybody has to bring its own power, has to bring its own communication system. Then obviously there's the important idea to go forward to Mars, moon to Mars. That's even, I think NASA even called the directorate moon to Mars, which shows the importance of using this the moon as a stepping stone to get to Mars. And then I think what's also important nowadays is inspire a whole new generation. I think our generation, and specifically yours, we are not part of the Apollo generation. We are part of the end of the space shuttle generation, which unfortunately was not a very nice end. And I think this will help to inspire a whole new generation and push the boundaries of technologies.
Absolutely, Bob. And I think this is a very nice connection with the next topic that I wanted to discuss, with you today, which is sustainability, right? One of the differences between, the Apollo era, which has been obviously fantastic and instrumental in developing the technologies we use today, and what we want to do in the new era of space exploration is sustainability. And sustainability means a lot of different things, but overall, it means being able to hand over to the next generation. So I think, Paolo, maybe you can comment on that also, because the Turtle Initiative is exactly focused on this. Sustainability means that we are able to continuously explore the moon without jeopardizing the possibility to do so for the future. And so to do that at the same time, we need to think in a sustainable way. And personally, I believe, and I would be curious to hear your thoughts, that sustainable also means holistic. It means that we need to connect the pieces, right? As Bob said, it wouldn't make any sense that on the moon, every single actor would have a different power system, and then a different landing system, and then a different, maybe communication, but like certain things, it makes sense to share. And share does not mean that they have to come for free, but for sure it means that we will be going there as humanity. Another quote from Jan Werner is that the moon village that he launched as an idea in 2016 was supposed to be an environment where cooperation and competition can thrive, but a shared environment, right? So a place where we go together and not as separate missions and not as separate individuals, but at the end of the day, realizing that also the moon is really small. And so if we share it, it works much better. But Paolo, how do we do that in practice? Technically speaking, it's a challenge. What are the main things that we need to keep in mind when talking about sustainable lunar exploration?
Thank you, Antonino. This is a beautiful question. And you mentioned communications before when speaking about sharing infrastructure and resources. And actually, this reminds me of a very recent initiative at ESA concerning the development of this satellite system orbiting the moon, just to offer communications as a services to companies. So this is a perfect example of shared infrastructure and of the fact that collaborating can actually unlock that win-win games. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, right? So this is an extremely it's a critical perspective. And to address the other points in your question, of course, I think that sustainability is an imperative, might be a moral imperative, ideally, but of course we have to be well grounded on Earth. So I think we need to take into account the positive implications that sustainability has on every effort, but from a technical standpoint and also from an economical perspective. So think of, for instance, decreasing the need for resupplies by recycling some wastes or upcycling some wastes in situ, or creating local demands for byproducts of mining activities, such as methane or excess oxygen or hydrogen, if oxygen is produced for life support purposes only, or sharing infrastructure again, or repurposing spacecraft that are at their end of service. So numerous applications from this point of view. I do realize that it might be hard to do this from the very beginning, to implement circularity, 100% from T0. But to achieve these, we can start by gradually including circularity in the design, the technical design, the legal design, which is something like as critical as technical, of course. And we need to create incentives for all the actors involved. And I believe we can also start looking at some positive examples right here on this planet, on Earth, and identify best practices and also promising business models.
Absolutely. And, I would be curious to hear Miguel's thoughts on this circularity idea, how, from the perspective of scientists, again, how do we ensure this from scratch? Because at the moment, there is little or nothing on the moon. There are a bunch of rovers doing missions. How do we go from that to a circular environment, one day maybe a circular economy?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic. Yeah, so I believe that this a big change on the agencies. Yeah, you can see with the Artemis program compared to the Apollo program. Yeah, so the Apollo program was directly only NASA program to show, well, that they are faster and bigger and better than others, while Artemis program is more international. There is also the cooperation with companies out of US. There are also cooperation with many other space agencies, and there are open call for projects or contracts for companies also in other places. So that shows a little bit that's the mentality in many places. I would not say that in all the space agencies like this, but have been changed. Yeah, so and this is a very important initial step to have some kind of reuse of the technology, reuse of the knowledge, and also make it more for humankind, really. Yeah, not only for this specific country or that specific country, and to set the flag and say I win. Yeah, so that's this is a completely change of mentality that will help on the construction of this circular economy in the future. Yeah, but of course, yeah, that's it's a long time and a very difficult path to do. Yeah, and so there are places on Earth that this is not working well. So let's hope for the best. Yeah, so let's see.
True, but that's why, I think this is the beauty of space. So we can try to do things better in space than we're doing on Earth. So we can learn and improve. And Bob, I think, this all connects with the role that space agencies play and will play in the future, because in the past, we're used to see space agencies doing everything and mostly doing scientific activities. I think the LSA is a great example of a modern space agency trying to, connect the different elements of the community, different actors, leveraging the contributions of, private entities. So can you tell us a little bit how the LSA can play this catalyst role that will bring eventually the development of a circular environment? Because to have a circular environment, we need to have more players. If it's only one player, there is no circle. We need to rely on different areas and different elements. And I think space agencies have a critical role to play for that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think sustainability and circular ecosystem are very important, as it was already mentioned in the Space Resource.lu vision, that when we published it, we said that Luxembourg aims to contribute to a peaceful exploration and sustainable utilization of space resource for the benefit of humankind. I think this is a very strong sentence and strong message. We need to do this in a responsible manner. I think we should improve and come up with a more with a better system than down here on Earth. As you said, we have the chance to define a new system. This can only achieved by international collaboration. I think it's very important to share the same vision, to have the same framework, to evolve within this shared framework. I think it's if we want to share communication, energy, and so on, I think we need to be aware what is there, who can offer what. I think we need to set up this whole ecosystem, and it's through one common regulatory framework that we can achieve this. And I think there, obviously, the space agencies and the governments have a role to play. I think what it will look like, how it will be developed, will it be part of another space treaty or not? I think there are many. You probably know this as well. It's not clear at the moment how to do this, but I think it can only be solved by further pushing this discussion at the various bodies, and try. I think we all will win if we have the same framework.
I agree, Bob, and you anticipated one topic that I wanted to discuss a little bit later, but let's go through it now, which is governance, right? I think governance is going to be critical to ensure, and I think to enable also the technical and economical development of the moon the way it should be. And I mean, Paolo, you've been part of the Eagle team. Over the last year, we've met with different entities, including the Luxembourg Space Agency, actually. And the idea was really to discuss how to do that, how to have this governance system that will enable the sustainable development of the moon. Now, I could talk about this for hours as a space lawyer, but what I want to solicit here is your perspective, as a member of the young generation, but also as a scientist, as an engineer. How do you imagine this governance system? What do you want to see in it? Also, based on the experience we had during the Eagle team, And the idea that we propose, this lunar governance charter, what does it mean to you? You know, what is the value that you see compared to other instruments, in a non-technical way, obviously, but you know, exactly because you have this non-lawyer perspective, I think we can make this understandable and interesting for all our attendees, rather than if a space lawyer would talk about it.
Right. Thank you, Antonino. Oh, well, the Eagle action team has been an amazing experience, and your guidance has been great. I think that like that, of course, brought to the surface many really important points about lunar governance. We saw that there is some shared ground. There are so many perspectives arising from so many different actors with so many different interests, but still many of them converge on things like the need for a governance regime, the needs for regulation on space resources, the needs for interoperability or different types of benefit sharing. So I think an important realization is that there is a base where we can build on, and I believe that the advantage of a lunar charter compared to the existing proposals and solutions is the fact that it can capture the fact that all this we're talking about, all those perspectives and proposals are constantly evolving. So the charter can be adaptive as we need in order for this governance regimes to grow as we make new progresses on the moon exploration, and can also help integrate all these perspectives I was referring to. So UN COPUS, of course, shall be, you know, the reference point here, but that there is the opportunity now to integrate multiple voices, to make this more inclusive, more flexible, more nimble somehow, and diverse. So I think this is a crucial capability, and I'm sure that a lunar charter will be able to achieve that.
Thank you, Paulo. And you know, everyone who's interested can read more about the proposal for a charter in the Eagle report, and I'm going to post a link in the chat. But Miguel, what are your views on governance? Again, you come from a not legal or policy perspective. So again, for me, this is fascinating because you can tell me what do you want to see in these laws? You know, how do you want to see them? How we can, you know, enable you to do your job with the robots on the moon? How can we avoid standing in your way? What do you expect from a governance system at this time?
Yeah, that is in fact not on my topic. However, I have been thinking about that. Yeah, so yeah, that's starting with a very important law that LSA have launched with space resources utilization, and how to handle all these resources that you can get on wherever you are in space. Yeah, but yeah, so I see it a little bit like a difficult job for the lawyers. That's also a very interesting part that we are talking in the ISM, in the Interdisciplinary Space Master. We understood the importance, and also this is also a place to work on different research possibilities, not only on the law side, but also maybe applying blockchain or other type of technologies. That is what we are starting to do in 1st of July with a project that we got funded by FNR in the use of multi-robot cooperation and collaboration with using DLD, so blockchain technologies. Yeah, and also because yeah, you can have not only the possibility of use resources, but also the possibility of use robots from other missions, or also offer servicing there with the robots or with the things that you collected. Yeah, so that is what we want to study deeply during 3 years in this FireSpark project, in collaboration with the FINATRAX research group in SNT. So I will be able to give you an update maybe in 1.5 years, something like this.
Great. We can organize a follow-up event and talk about that. And Bob, you know, on the topic of governance, obviously, we also need to touch upon the Luxembourgish legislation on space resources and the US one. And I also take this opportunity to address one of the questions that we have on YouTube, which is about the compatibility of the Luxembourgish law with international law. And I mean, I think you can touch upon this, but what I want to say is that although there have been authors talking about whether national regulation of space resources is legitimate and to what extent is legitimate, I think a framework like the one that is developed in Luxembourg is perfectly compatible with international law, because it pays due respect to the international obligations of the government, as does the US law, by the way. And it also because it is done in a way that it enables the sustainable use of resources. And at the end of the day, the Outer Space Treaty says that there is the freedom to explore and use celestial bodies, including obviously the resources inside, because otherwise I could not imagine any use of a celestial body that would not include space resources. It would actually be a disadvantage, because if we would have to bring everything with us from Earth, the cost would be so high that only the rich countries would be able to engage in space exploration. So Bob, on the governance, you also talk about international framework. I think this is a great opportunity to clarify how the Luxembourgish law integrates in the international law perspective, and how it can actually help the development of better international law on the regulation of space resources. But not just that, because it is so much more than space resources, right? We have a lot of other things to take into account when we talk about governance.
Right. This is very important element for the future development of let's say lunar or space resource activities, or whatever you call them. I think it must be a very inclusive process, an adaptive process. It certainly will evolve. I think the needs or the needs in the beginning will be very different than those once a successful ecosystem has been put in place. I think what's really important is that we all share the same values and find the right balances between the different interests. I think there's not the humanity exists. You have many different parts. You have the public side, the private side, and all these governance or legal frameworks. They need to explain how we all work together, and there must be a place for everybody. I think it's important that private actors can, if we want really to have a thriving ecosystem, it's important to have this dynamic side of a private actor and not impose it by single or individual public missions. So I think however, we should have clear rules, not in order to get to this sustainable utilization of space resource, and not just exploit it for just pure commercial benefits of one person. I think we should find the right balance, but it also doesn't mean that you cannot have any commercial interest. You need to, I think all these governance models, whatever they will look like, they need to enable these developments and not impose a too strict framework that will not allow the different players to get there where they want to get to.
Absolutely, and I mean, this is also a concept that is begin to be shared by the space community. Open Lunar calls it polycentricity, right? We want to enable a polycentric governance system where different actors can also have different rules, because I am a huge fan that one size does not fit all. So we will have to come up with different governance system, even for different type of resources. Maybe ice is very abundant, so we can use it more freely, but other resources on the moon are less abundant, they are more scarce, and therefore we need to protect them. There are certain areas which need extra protection, like the radio quiet area, and other areas which could be used in a bit of more free way. So we will need to come up indeed with different rules. And I think this is also one of the bottom line of this event, is that to develop the moon and to go forward to the moon, we also need to go forward in our approach. So we need to, understand and have new perspective on how to govern the use of a celestial body, which is also an unprecedented endeavor. We have a general principle regulation in the Outer Space Treaty, but we need to move into a more detailed type of discussion, and that's going to be the challenge. But I completely agree with you, Bob. We cannot tie ourselves to certain rules that we decide today without the fundamental experience that we need to develop tomorrow. At the same time, we also do not want to lose the opportunity to do these activities tomorrow because we have been excessive today. So the purpose is really to find this balance between, you know, adaptive governance, which will develop as we go by, and sustainable governance, which will ensure that we're not making mistakes that will spoil the use of the moon for future generations. And I think this is also a very nice closure of our panel discussion, and we can also move to address some of the questions that we have in the chat, because there is a lot of them, and I want to give the time to properly address them. And I would like to start with one question from Karim. I will try to direct the questions to a specific panelist just to save a little bit time. But if you want to interject and, you know, and comment in addition, please feel free to just unmute yourself and do so. So I would like to direct Karim's question to Paolo. And Karim's question is about pollution. It says that obviously ISU is very interesting, but we shouldn't make a landfill out of the moon. And I think this nicely connects with the research we have also done together on, you know, waste management and regeneration of resources. So maybe Paolo, you can talk about how do we avoid polluting the moon, which is certainly a point of concern when we talk about also sustainable space exploration.
Thank you very much, Antonino, and thank you, Karim, for your question. I'll try to give you my perspective, of course, from an engineering point of view. And I think that when it comes to waste management, it's important to, well, first reduce the amount of waste that is produced, and that will be the first, you know, strategy, the first way of preventing the moon from becoming a landfill. So being able of having more efficient technologies that reduce the amount of scrap that we produce every time, that's the first bit. And then, of course, we need to build as well the ability to recycle those wastes. So transform them in something that is either completely different or that can serve a similar purpose, perhaps in a slightly different way. So let me give you a simple example. Let's take water extraction, water mining as the #1 space resources ISRU activity, or one of the main ones. When you extract water ice from the regolith that you can find at the bottom of a crater, then what you get is, of course, water on one side and dried regolith, like dried rocks. That can be somehow a form of waste. Now you have the chance of either building a technology that only extracts the water without having to move that regolith in another location, which comes with the burden of having to like dispose it, or you can then use that regolith, for instance, to build berms, landing pads, walls, shields, to bury structures on the regolith, to shield from radiation and so on. So these are ways in which we can kind of put the wastes back into the loop and make sure that they serve a meaningful purpose and take part of the development of the moon without polluting.
Nice. Thank you, Paolo. I completely agree. And I think, you know, reducing waste or avoiding the creation of waste should be at the forefront of any activity we start to do on the moon. Miguel, there is a question for you from Andrea, and the question is, how do you see the European industry in robotics compared to other regions? Whether the industry is picking up, what could we be missing? I think this is a crucial element, again, to engage in a new era of lunar exploration. We need the industry with us. We need a European industry as well, because obviously we need to have a diverse set of missions, and Europe is certainly an important player. So how are we standing in that terms?
Well, there is good players in Europe, and also, for example, in Luxembourg. Yeah? There is a space company in Luxembourg. There is space application services in Belgium. There are many bigger companies like Airbus and other ones that are working on this topic. Yeah, I believe that we are on a good shape, I would say. Of course, we need more funding from European Commission, for example. That is something that we were trying to make aware last month in the European Robotics Forum, organized by the topic group of space robotics, where I am the deputy chair. with Thomas Vogel from DLR. And we show that, there's in fact not too many funding opportunities on European projects, but I would say that this is on the procedure to change, and we will have more opportunities to also collaborate with academia, with companies to improve these systems, and also very important activities that the one that have been launched by ESA and ESRIC for Lunar Robotic Challenge. Yeah, that will open up the opportunities to collaborate with companies and also to go beyond. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you. Excellent answer. And Bob, Patrick has a question for you about Australia. They have a very well automated mining sector. If that is true, and is there any knowledge transfer going in international framework? I think there are a lot of partnerships with Australia. Luxembourg and Australia are part of the Artemis Accords, so for sure they already have a pretty tight relationship, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more on the connections with other players which are very knowledgeable in terms of mining terrestrial industry.
Yes, so when it comes to space resource and mining, obviously Australia has a lot of technology that can be transferred to space. I think this, let's say, modern way of doing space is also to include terrestrial technologies and new companies that traditionally were not part of space, and make them part of space. When it now comes specifically to mining, Luxembourg has a continuous exchange with different players in Australia, with various universities, with the Australian Space Agency. And on the other side, I think space resources can also help the mining industry to improve. For example, precision mining is a big topic for the mining industry, to develop new ways of mining here on Earth to generate, for example, as Paulo mentioned, less waste when you extract a resource. Then another topic that's also very interesting and potentially can be beneficial for terrestrial mining is waterless mining. I think nowadays the mining industry uses a lot of water, and many processes depend on the water. And if we want to successfully develop an ecosystem on the lunar surface, obviously we cannot base those processes on water. So we need to come up with different ways of processing those minerals. And I think it's automation is another important topic. In Australia, a lot of those large mining companies, they operate their mines remotely already. So maybe it's not purely autonomous in an autonomous system, but the operators, they sit in the large cities and they do not sit next to the mines. That's also a very useful know-how to do teleoperation of lunar mines. But I can assure you that the Australians, they are very active in this. So also in the partnership and their collaboration with the Artemis Accords, this is an interesting topic.
Definitely. And, I think one of the great things of coalitions like the Artemis Accords is that every player brings a different perspective and a different contribution. Totally. And indeed, Australia has this technology, Luxembourg has the ecosystem from the economy. So it integrates, I think, nicely among the partners. And this also connects us to another point, right? The relationship between terrestrial and space mining is also part of how do we ensure that space resources can enable sustainable development not only in space, but also on Earth. And I have this question that I would like to address to all of you. Maybe we can begin with Paulo, but how Florent asked, how do you see moon space resources exploration improving Earth planet life and making it more sustainable? How do we incorporate that aspect? So not only space resources for space, but space resources and lunar exploration for the Earth. I have to say, this is a very difficult question also because any activity bringing back resources is complicated, it's very expensive. So maybe that's not going to be the first thing we're going to do, although maybe one thinks, okay, let's just mine stuff and bring it back. It doesn't work like that. But we can learn, right? We can learn technologies, we can learn processes, and then we can implement them. So Paolo, how this new exploration and especially the use of space resources can help us not only in space, but on Earth.
Thank you, Antonino, and thank you, Laurent. I believe that the best way to approach this is the technological development point of view, and Bob touched on very important topics right now in this domain. So waterless mining and precision mining are exceptional capabilities that can greatly benefit mining on Earth, and like mining on Earth is an extremely polluting activity, especially where it is not conducted with the proper, with the most advanced technologies. And I will add on top of that that there is a great deal of benefit that we could draw to fight climate change in building technologies for space resources. So remaining in the realm of metal extraction, another important part of it is perhaps, let's call it carbonless mining, meaning that and now I'm mostly referring to actually what you do after mining. So processing the ores, the minerals. Right now, for instance, for steel on Earth, we use processes that emit a lot of carbon dioxide that are extremely polluting and dangerous for the environment. But there is the possibility to substitute in some steps of this chain less polluting substances. We can produce metals by using hydrogen instead of carbon. And that will be great. And space, of course, is one of the domains where this capability is most important. So having these maturing for space applications can generate benefits and spillovers the terrestrial applications. And power as well is fundamental. When we think about decarbonization, fighting climate change with cleaner electricity and energy sources, hydrogen plays again a fundamental role. So building, for instance, that fuel cell technologies is going to play an extremely important role in helping us transition to cleaner energies here on Earth. And we need better fuel cells in space as well. We need fuel cells that can last longer, that can function in a reverse mode and help us store hydrogen. And these are all activities that will greatly benefit our activities here on Earth. So that's definitely important.
Absolutely. Maybe I can add a few words to that, and also give one example, concrete example, what Paolo just mentioned. So at ESRIC, we are currently discussing with a different research project with the European Space Agency. And for the European Space Agency, this space resource is considered as an enabler for sustainable space exploration. So for them, the production of oxygen is one of the priorities. And that's also one of the topics we closely look at with them. And then there are different technologies to produce oxygen on the moon. And one particular technology is the hydrogen reduction. And currently we are setting up a project together with them on hydrogen reduction, on oxygen demonstrator based on hydrogen reduction, and improve that together with plasma-enabled technology to make this process more efficient to produce oxygen. Now, when you come to the terrestrial industry, obviously green steel and hydrogen reduction is an important topic for the future of the space industry. And knowing that historically Luxembourg is very active in the steel industry, this is also an important topic for local players. And we are currently discussing with several players to combine the different interests. The terrestrial industry is interested in this process to improve it and produce metals and green steel, so-called green steel. And on the other side, you have the space agency, which is interested in this process to produce oxygen on the lunar surface. So obviously the goal is not exactly the same, but the area and the research that has to be done to improve these topics is very close. And I think both sides can learn, and the developments we do for space can at some point benefit terrestrial activities.
Absolutely. Miguel, I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
No, that's I completely agree with Paulo and Bob. Yeah, so I think that's a really important topic, and yeah. So
yeah,
let's continue with the other question, because I'm seeing that they are starting to have more and more. Yeah.
Yeah. We got a lot of questions. This is great. Thank you for everyone
Absolutely.
tuning in. Yeah. There is another one that maybe I can direct to you directly, which is about creating a standardization body for space. Do you think that could be useful? This is a question from Mark Mayer. To enable, that we all develop together the standards, instead of one country, one player developing the standards and the others have to follow the standards. Do you think that that's feasible? Is it too much? How do we ensure this development of standards in an inclusive way? I think it's actually a very important question for inclusiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. The standards are really, really important. If we can do it in space, that will be absolutely great, because on Earth we didn't manage to do it with the film industry, with DVDs or different kind of TVs and blah blah, or USB. You see it there. Now we have multiple USB cables, and it's difficult to have this standardization. That is a bigger need, of course, in space. Yeah. So the companies and the agencies should work on this standardization, not only on the hardware but also on the policies. Yeah, so that's it's really critical. Yeah, so in some of these cases, it's the first one that provide a system, a software, or a model is creating the standard. Yeah, but let's see about it. Yeah, that's very challenging, and I'm looking forward to see how it's evolving.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Bob, the Luxembourg Space Agency at some point had a project called LORS, which was about the development of standards for space mining. I think maybe that connects to this necessity of having a sort of international approach to the standardization process for mining, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. We also, that was a project run by Carlos from iSpace, together with the Luxembourgish, or the National the National Research Fund. LORS stands for the Lunar Ore Reserve reporting system, and I think standards and standards are needed and will be successful where we need them. Whenever we do not have a common interest, they will not be successful. And when you have different commercial interests, I guess the different example mentioned by Miguel clearly shows that when you have different diverging commercial interests, it's very difficult to have common standards. But on the other side, when, for example, all I think the internet world is largely based on common standards. I think because we all have a need to communicate with each other, and when we translate this now into space, I think where we need common standards, we will have them. I'm pretty confident. For example, the docking mechanism. At some point, if we want to go from one unit to the other, we need it, and there's a clear interest for both parties to agree to a shared standard. Mm-hmm. On the reporting, I think it's also important to have one. Maybe I think it was Paulo, he mentioned in the beginning the Lunar communication and navigation system that's currently put in place with the European Space Agency. I'm pretty sure if this is successful and many people start to use it, this will somehow lead naturally to a shared standard, and everybody will use that standard to communicate and to define the position on the lunar surface. So yes, we need standards. I think it's very important, but I think we should not impose standards just for the sake of having standards. I think we should leave enough room for innovation and creativity as well.
I absolutely agree. And I think this nicely connect with the question asked from Sandro, which is what gives you the confidence that all players even want to follow one framework? It's talking about, governance. Different countries and ideologies have different views on how to develop space, and one day settlements will self-govern themselves. This is obviously a good point, right? I'm going to try to answer this as well, but feel free to interject, all of you who would like to comment. I think, as Bob just said, it's a matter of incentives, and it's also a matter of priorities, right? We do not have to agree on everything. This would be also unnatural. I think one of the rich thing of humanity is diversity. So we do not have to massify our answers and our approaches, but there are certain elements that are more important than others, and certain issues that we need to have a common approach, certain things on which we have to have a common framework, and then we will develop and we'll differentiate. So I think there is a strong interest from all players, and there is the understanding that if we do not have a general framework altogether with the same principles and the basic needs that we have, at least on the moon, so power, landing, and certain type of transport, then we will not even be able to do lunar exploration. I think this is the point, right? If we want to do it sustainably, if we want to do it in an economic way, we need to pull resources in certain things. And that also requires a general legal framework that enables everyone to do that. And then in the future, self-governing settlements is always a topic that comes up in these discussions. Obviously, self-determination is a fundamental principle of international law. Nobody denies that, but it's also based on your autonomy and independence, right? So only self-autonomous settlements can and are entitled to self-determination and to self-governance. So as long as these activities are strongly independent on, Earth contributions, Earth communities, and they're not completely self-sustained, then I think there should be a shared form of governance. In the beginning, it will be provided by us on Earth, and then as these communities develop, we will definitely look into different forms of governance. But that we will have self-governing communities in space, it's certainly a wonderful scenario, but also one that will probably take a couple of 100 years to verify, because we need a lot of resources to survive on our own in space without any relationship with Earth. But for the present, I think there is, despite the differences, there is an interest in cooperating, in finding shared grounds and developing, certain type of fundamental infrastructures together. I don't know if any of you would like to comment on this.
Yeah, maybe I can say a few words on that as well. I think what we need to keep in mind that it's an inclusive effort. We try to find the shared vision. I think when we say about one common legal framework or regulatory framework, it doesn't mean that one party controls everything. I think it must be a system that allows enough freedom for everybody. I think probably it should be agreed by consensus or agreed by everybody and supported by everybody. That's also what makes it so difficult. I think it's all about politics. I think that's also. I think the last space treaty was agreed in 76,
yeah.
70s, because exactly all the parties need to agree. And I think it's in everybody's interest to agree on these basic principles. It doesn't mean that somebody or one party needs to control everything, but and it must also be set up in a way that everybody benefits from this framework. And if we find the right balance, I'm pretty sure that most of the people will follow that framework if it allows everybody to develop those activities.
Indeed, it is a challenge, but I think it's one that we can overcome with the right attitude and with the contributions of all different players, which I think what we're trying to do now. Now the discussion in Corpus is becoming more and more inclusive and active, and I think the upcoming legal subcommittee, despite the hybrid format, could be a great framework to conduct these discussions in a more let's say active way. Unfortunately, last year with the Corpus, there was no meeting of the legal subcommittee, and that already is something, right? So we missed 1 year of space diplomacy in a way, and now we're trying to recover. And I think we're pretty good on that, and I think we have pretty good chances of succeeding, in the future. And then once we have this common framework, people can always differentiate, and within certain boundaries, I think even diverge. But that's in the nature of things, done in a way that allows and that reduce actually conflicts. So then I think it's only productive. It is what we want to have. We want to have a different and differentiated ecosystem. I have a final question from the audience, from Karim, and then we will wrap up because we're almost at the end of our event. This is probably more for Paolo and Miguel, so feel free to jump in. The question is about energy. Obviously, solar energy has a certain limit of energy that can be produced. So do you have any insights on using nuclear energy on the moon? I just will say that one of the last things done by the Trump administration was to sign Space Policy Directive, I think it was number 5 or 6, that talks about developing a nuclear production plant on the moon. So this is something pretty massive in a certain way. In Europe, we have a different tendency and approach towards nuclear energy. I see Miguel already unmuted, so feel free to jump in.
Well, that is happening. So the Ju-22, the rover of the Chang'e 5 mission that is on the moon is surviving the night of the moon because it's powered by nuclear energy. Yeah, so you have to take into account that to survive the nights on the moon, the temperature drops extremely, and to survive, you need this kind of energy. Yeah? At least until the moment, it's the only solution. And also the Viper, the rover that linked to the Artemis mission, Artemis program, is going to be powered by nuclear energy. So that is happening. Then there are some plans. Maybe now it's more on the artistic, the science or pictures, but of course I completely agree with Karin. We will need a high amount of watt that will not be dependent on solar panels, unless the solar panels technology makes big advances. But yeah, so there are plans, as you mentioned also, Antonino. There is this point signed by Trump, and also the idea of establish nuclear plants on the moon. Yeah.
Yeah. Paolo, I don't know, would you like to add anything on this?
Well, I guess Miguel touched on all the points here and covered it all. I just want to echo that and say that for large-scale energy production, nuclear is definitely perhaps the best way to go. And even though there might be peaks of eternal light or areas in the moon where the sun shines like for a lot of time, that might not be ideal and might constrain again what you can do to that area. Nuclear, and it's going to be more important, perhaps this is something I can add, it's going to be more and more important as we venture further from the moon. So if we go to Mars, then the solar illumination there will be worse. So solar panels, solar photovoltaic will be less efficient than it could be on the moon. So that puts additional urgency on building and deploying these technologies.
Mm.
Absolutely. Bob, yeah?
I think there's a very nice idea on the long term is to produce solar panels from the lunar regolith, as we find all the elements on the moon to build solar panels. I think on the moon without the atmosphere, the clouds, those panels are likely to be very efficient. Nevertheless, I think to get there, nuclear will play an important role, and also to run all these different processes, such as this reduction of the metal oxides or the splitting the water requires a lot of energy, and that's where nuclear has a role to play. And it's so important that I say even in Europe we start looking into that, and the European Space Agency is currently evaluating how and under what framework and if and why and so on. Even in Europe we would use that. So I think it's as important for get this whole thing started, that even here we start changing our minds.
Yeah, we need to adapt, and I think again it's important to have a differentiated approach. So it's not only be nuclear, and it's not going to be only solar. We're going to integrate depending on also our experience and our learning curve on the moon. I think this brings to the end of our discussion. Before we close, I think we'll take extra 5 minutes because I want to give all the panelists an opportunity to say some final remarks, and then we will leave our audience. I think this has been anyways a fantastic event. I hope everybody enjoyed. We got a lot of questions, and I want to thank everybody who engaged with us. Everyone also who is watching the recording, this will be available on the website and on the YouTube channel of the University of Luxembourg. We're going to post it on SGC website as well. I hope the LSA will do the same, so you will be able to find this also further. And please, if you enjoyed the event, share it and distribute it with people that may be interested in this further conversation. Obviously, this is only the starting point of broader conversations that we all want to have together in the world and also in Luxembourg, because one of the purposes of this was also to frame and to explicit that we have a very good ecosystem in Luxembourg to discuss about these things. We care for this, and we invite everyone, international partners and locals, to engage and to continue this discussion further on. So I think on this note, Bob, do you want to make any final remarks? And then Miguel, and then Paulo, and then I will close.
No, I think I mainly wanted to thank the organizer for this event. I think it was a very pleasant, very interesting discussion. I hope we could share some interesting thoughts with the audience. And personally, I'm very curious to see how this all develops over the next years.
Thank you very much, Bob. Miguel, I think you're muted.
Okay. So much better now. So I also want to thank for the organization, also for the participants, also for the people who put the questions, and also thank you all of you for this really nice conversation and discussions. So it is of course a very interesting topic that is just starting. We have in Luxembourg and in Europe a very nice opportunity to develop this further. And of course, I'm looking forward, and I hope I will be a strong part on the developing here in Luxembourg and in Europe. So looking forward to also keep on growing. Maybe I have some applicants to my positions who were as participants here. So really happy to participate in this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. And it was really great to have such a very interesting discussion with all of you, bringing also different perspectives and different contributions. Paulo, any few final remarks?
Thank you, Antonino. I'm just seeing that we have an hand raised. I don't know if you want to address that first.
No, that is fine. I think it was lowered now.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I have to send my gratitude, express my gratitude and appreciation to the organizers, to the panelists, and to all the participants for their questions and interaction. This has been great. It's been an amazing opportunity to learn and exchange ideas and thoughts. Really looking forward for the next one. And I'm looking forward to get in touch with all those of you who might be interested in Sgc Space Exploration Project Group activities, the Turtle Initiative, and the Eagle one, of course. So I hope we can stay in touch. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paulo. And I mean, this was really a wrap. Thank you very much, all of you who participated in this event. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. I think you all brought very interesting perspective, a lot of things to think about, and you prompt a very nice conversation. So I want to thank you once more for being very informative and also very relaxed, very accessible. I think one of the challenges of these events is to make them accessible and understandable for everybody. And I think today we succeeded in this, and I see the audience is appreciating. So thank you all. Thank you for following. And please keep in mind that the discussion on the moon has just started. So everyone is invited. Everyone from the space community should participate. This is a part of the discussion. It's only the beginning, and hopefully all of you that are interested in this topic will have an opportunity to participate, to make your voice heard I would encourage you to do so, because again, it is extremely important that we do not fail the moon. We do not fail our exploration of the moon. It is something that goes really beyond the value of a certain program, of a certain mission, of a certain company. It is much more important than that. So I think I want to close with this thought that we're going forward to the moon, and we're also trying to go there together as humanity, which does not have to mean that one is controlling the other. We're all doing the same thing, but that we go there in harmony. And at the end of the day, this is the purpose of imagining the moon as a circular environment, as a moon village, as Jan Werner said, and you can have all different names for that. But the concept, the idea is that we are in this together. The moon is our shared resource in many ways, culturally, spiritually, scientifically. And so let's keep that in mind. And I think with that in mind, we will be able to develop all the instruments we need to succeed in lunar exploration from a technical, policy, economic, and legal viewpoint. So thank you so much, everyone. Ad Luna, as some people say these days, and looking forward to the next event. And thank you very much again for following us today.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.